Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. This is part one of a four-part interview with convicted serial killer and mass murderer Todd Kohlhepp. Todd is convicted of murdering 7 people in South Carolina from 2003 throughout 2016. He is also convicted on 2 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of criminal sexual assault. Todd was born on March 7th, 1971. We concluded the first part of the interview on his 50th birthday. He was born Todd Christopher Samsel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. His mom and dad divorced when he was 2 years old, and his mother was granted full custody, and she remarried not long after divorcing his father. Todd's legal last name was changed to Kohlhepp when he was 13 years old. His childhood has been described as troublesome. The people who were around Todd growing up described him as an explosive kid. Todd's father would go on to say the only emotion his son was capable of was anger. There was allegations of Todd abusing animals, which he will speak about in the interview. In 1983, Todd was sent to live with his biological father in Tempe, Arizona, when he was 12 years old. On November 25th, 1986, Todd kidnapped a 14-year-old girl from Tempe. He threatened her with a .22 caliber revolver. He brought her back to his home, subdued her, taped her mouth shut, and then raped her. After he got done assaulting her, he walked her home and threatened to kill her siblings if she said anything about the incident. Todd was charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and committing a dangerous crime against children. In 1987, he pled guilty to the kidnapping charge, and the other charges were dropped. At the age of 15 years old, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison and was required to register as a sex offender. He at one point was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and had an IQ of 118 during his court proceedings as a juvenile. The judge that sentenced him said that he was very bright and should be advanced academically, but he was behaviorally and emotionally dangerous, and likely that he couldn't be rehabilitated. Todd's probation officer wrote a statement for the court and said that he felt that the world owed him something. Todd took advantage of the academic programs while he was incarcerated. He attended and graduated from Central Arizona College with a bachelor's degree in computer science. During his first stint in prison, he got into a few scuffles, but his behavior record was clean after he turned 20, up until he got out in 2001 at the age of 30 years old. After he got out, he moved to South Carolina where his mother was living at the time. From January 2002 to November 2003, he had worked as a graphic designer for a company in Spartanburg, South Carolina. He went back to school in 2003. He was attending Greenville Technical College, but transferred the following year to the University of South Carolina Upstate. He graduated in 2008 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration Marketing. Even though he was a registered sex offender, Todd was able to get his real estate license after he had lied about his felony conviction on the application. After getting his real estate license, he built a real estate firm that had over a dozen agents. He at one point was a top selling agent in the Carolina region. After his arrest, the firm had shut down. Todd even had a private plane license and had multiple properties that were out of state. On November 6, 2003, a customer went inside to the Superbike Motorsports in Chesney, South Carolina, and came across 4 people that had been shot to death. The 4 victims were identified as Scott Ponder, 30 years old, the service manager, Brian Lucas, 30 years old, mechanic, Chris Sherbert, 26 years old, and Beverly Guy, 52 years old, whom was Scott Ponder's mother and the bookkeeper for the bike shop. Before Todd confessed to the mass murder in 2016, law enforcement believed that the gunman was armed with a pistol and had entered the shop from the back entrance and killed the 4 individuals. Todd explains the entire incident in depth over the course of our interview. On August 31st, 2016, Kayla Brown, 30 years old, and her boyfriend, Charles David Carver, 32 years old, went missing after they went up to clean up Todd's property. Charles's body was later discovered on Todd's property. He had died from multiple gunshot wounds. On November 3rd, authorities found Kayla chained to the wall inside of a metal storage container. The authorities tracked her down using the couple's last known cell phone signals. When they arrived at the property, they started hearing banging. Soon after they found Kayla. They found Charles's car, which Todd had covered up with some brush. Todd shot Charles multiple times in front of Kayla. Todd's mother claimed that Charles was killed for having a really smart mouth. Todd had stated that he kept Kayla alive because she didn't do anything wrong and that he didn't want to hurt her. While Kayla was being held captive, she was shown where he had buried bodies to intimidate her into not trying to escape. After his arrest, 2 more bodies were discovered on the property. The victims were identified as husband and wife, 29-year-old Johnny Joe Coxey and 26-year-old Megan Coxey. Both of them were residents of Spartanburg, and they were also hired by Todd to work on his property. Johnny died from gunshot wounds after being shot in the torso on December 19th. Todd kept Megan alive for another week before shooting her in the head. Todd was arrested shortly after Kayla was rescued. There's a video out there, I believe you can pull it up on YouTube, just type in Todd Kohlhepp search warrant, that shows the moment he was served the search warrant by law enforcement. After his arrest, he later confessed to the bike shop murders and the murders of the Coxies in exchange for speaking to his mother to give her a photograph and to wire money to a college fund for a friend of his. After his property was searched, authorities found multiple weapons, suppressors, and a large amount of ammunition. During their investigation, law enforcement came across quite a few disturbing Amazon product reviews. One review about a padlock read, "Solid locks, have 5 on a shipping container. Won't stop them, but sure will slow them down till they are too old to care." Another review that was written for a folding shovel read, "Keep in car for when you have to hide the bodies and you left the full-size shovel at home. Does not come with a midget, which would have been nice." Todd was charged with 4 counts of murder for the bike shop murders and 1 count for the kidnapping of Kayla Brown. He was later charged with 3 additional counts of murder for the murders of Charles and the Coxies, along with an additional count of kidnapping and 3 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a violent crime. Relatives of the victims that were killed at the bike shop, as well as Kayla, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Todd on December 1st. On May 26, 2017, Todd Kohlhepp pled guilty to 7 counts of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of criminal sexual assault, and he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole and a plea bargain that spared him the death penalty. In August 2020, some of Todd's belongings were available to the public to bid on through an auction house. The proceeds were donated to the victims' families. Here's part 1 of my interview with Todd Kohlhepp.
This is a Global Tel-Link prepaid call from
Todd.
an inmate at South Carolina Department of Corrections, Broad River Correctional Institution.
Where were you born?
Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was only there for about 4 months. Mom gave birth as soon as I came out. I mean, my parents would not get along. Dad was actually on a date with another woman the night that I was born. My grandmother had to go find him, and as soon as I came out, I mean, she moved to Atlanta.
What was your first positive memory as a child?
Playing with the animals at my grandparents' farm. I didn't like my parents very well. Didn't like my grandparents, but I liked the animals. I go out in the fields and roam around with the cows, and we had a couple horses and a lot of ducks.
You said you didn't like your grandparents. What was the reasoning for that?
My grandparents never wanted to be parents, and they definitely did not want to be grandparents. They reminded my mom almost daily how they did not like being parents, and they were very bitter about being grandparents. From the time that I was 5 years old, my grandfather thought it was a lot of fun to hit me and my mom with a cattle prod. He thought it was fun to watch me jump. So, I mean, I would get hit with a cattle prod at 5, and about the time I turned 8, he decided that it was a whole lot more fun every time I had any infraction from homework wasn't the way he liked it, to I didn't clean the chicken coop the way he wanted. I got woken up at 4 in the morning, dragged out by my hair, tied to a tree and beat. His attitude was, if you can still scream, we're not done. So I don't like my grandparents very much.
Did he ever abuse your grandma, or did he just abuse you and your mom?
I have no idea. My grandmother was vicious. I mean, she loved me, but that woman carried 3 guns everywhere she went, and she will cut you. That is one woman not to be played with. She was looking for opportunities to use one of them. I have actually seen her shoot the shotgun at people. When I was young, she actually had she didn't like how somebody had parked too long near the railroad track, and she actually rammed them with her car. So the lady had attitude problems. I don't think those two ever had any. They just had separate bedrooms. they live with each other, but neither one of them liked either one, but they stay with each other.
What was your first negative memory as a child?
Getting hit with a taser. With my dad, the last time I saw my dad at that time was when I was 4, and I spent 2 weekends with him before he allowed my mom's new husband number 3, to adopt me and have my last name changed. I was originally born with the last name of Samsel. When he allowed Carl to adopt me, my name got changed to Kohlhepp. The last 2 weekends I spent with him, the first weekend, he left me in the front yard at 4 years old for about 2 hours while he went inside of the house to go get laid and just left me in the front yard. I went roaming around and got lost in the neighborhood. Neighbors had to bring me back. The next weekend, took me to the apartment and the pool at nighttime. I didn't know how to swim, and he thought it would be fun to throw me in the pool, where I sank because I couldn't swim, got water in my lungs, and ended up getting pneumonia and had to go to the hospital. At that time, he figured fatherhood wasn't for him, and I didn't see him again until I was 12.
How would you describe your entire childhood? Was there anything positive from it? From the sounds of it, there was a lot of abuse, both physical and psychological. How would you describe it all around?
I survived it. I mean, everyone's got bad childhoods. I mean, some have worse, some have better. My parents never wanted to be parents. It impacted how I wanted to have kids or be around kids. I was always worried I was going to become my parents. I never was. My childhood, I spent most of the time avoiding people, very shy. We moved all the time, so I was always the new guy at the school. And I spent most of my time in the woods, basically building dams on every little creek I could find. You know, playing with animals, and I made friends with animals, and I didn't really care about any of the neighbors. I wasn't going to be there long enough to remember their names, so why bother?
I know you talked about the abuse that your grandpa put you through. Is there any other abuse that you suffered as a child that you haven't talked about yet?
Well, let's see. Grandfather liked to beat on me. Mom's husband, Carl, former Marine, total asshole. Every guy around him can't stand him. He took great pleasure in basically being a over-aggressive asshole in the house, throwing bowls at people. Never had anything good to say. And any time he walked by me, I got backhanded. I had real bad allergies as a kid, and anytime I sniffled in the slightest, I got backhanded. I wanted nothing to do with him. He had 2 other kids, and they had lived with us when we moved to St. Louis. When his ex-wife came to St. Louis and called the school posing as our aunt, they had said that my mom had died in a car crash, and that she was there to pick up Michelle and Michael. Nobody ever dawned on the fact that there's 3 Kohlhepp kids. Where's Kohlhepp? Where's Tom? They didn't even think about it. So she picked up Michelle and Michael and drove back to Georgia. He later on found out that what had happened when everybody was freaking out that the kids had been kidnapped, and come to find out the mom had them, he gave up custody. Didn't want to put her in jail. And from that point on, I mean, he was just he changed. He became a total arrogant ass with everybody. The funny part about that, if you want to call it that, is that his ex-wife, Sue, ended up marrying another serial killer by the name of Gary Hilton, who's now on death row in Florida. I was a little surprised the media never picked up on that. But he actually raised Michelle and Michael after they left. But I never got along with any of my mom's husbands. I mean, she married a guy before my dad. My dad was abusive. The guy before was abusive. but I wasn't around at that time. He was towards her. Carl liked to be abusive, and then later on, she basically dated ongoing, usually married men, and she ended up marrying 9 times. Well, to be fair about it, she did marry Jim and Carl twice. I mean, she leapfrogged between them. Carl to Jim, back to Carl, back to Jim. But, yeah, she was married 9 times, and really, while she always wanted to be a mom with kids, the fact of already having a kid tends to interrupt her dating and trying to find the next guy. So a lot of times I got moved over to my grandparents, so I'd be out of sight, out of mind. I didn't want to be around any of them anyhow, so I didn't really care. And I gave up even trying to memorize their name. They would pop up, tell me their name, try to put, you can call me Daddy. No, I'm good. I'm going to go out here and play with the ducks. Bye.
So, what was your relationship like overall with both your mother and your father growing up?
They were separated the whole time. Never really knew my dad except for like 2 weekends. When I was 4, didn't see him until I was 12. Lived with my mom up until the time I was 12, 12 and a half. Mom was there. I mean, she cared, but it was pretty much, she was more focused on getting her next man, making sure her husband was happy, and making sure she kept that where she wanted. I stayed out of sight, out of mind as much as possible. It was obvious I wasn't really wanted around. My grandparents let it be known that I was not wanted around. So me disappearing for half a day to go play in the woods I wasn't missed. They could care less. At about 12 and a half, I got reintroduced to my dad. All of a sudden, he wanted to tell me all these crazy stories of how he was just special forces, and the man lied his ass off. He was never special forces. He was never Green Beret. The man didn't do shit. He just likes to lie. But to a 12-year-old, I mean, that was the man. I heard all the stuff, believed it. Came over to Arizona for one summer to meet him. As soon as I went back, told my mom I wanted to move out here. At that point, to move to Arizona. It was okay for about 6 months. And then it came real soon that, that wore off, and I was basically labor. And he was focused on chasing women and working at the restaurant and doing whatever he wanted to do and basically stealing whatever he can get his hands on. I'm very anti-stealing stuff. You don't steal. That man's never found anything he couldn't steal. So we didn't get along real well.
Up until you did move to your dad's house, your legal last name was Todd Christopher Samsel. What prompted your dad to change your last name when you moved with him?
Okay, when I was 4, it was changed from Samsel to Kohlhepp. It was Kohlhepp the whole time I was in South Carolina, Missouri, and Georgia. When I moved to Arizona to be with my dad, it was still legally Kohlhepp, but I went back to using Samsel because that was his last name. That was my dad. So while I was out there, I used Samsel. But as soon as I got arrested at 15, the courts only recognized Kohlhepp, and I wanted nothing to do with him, so I didn't really care, and I went right back to Kohlhepp.
While you were living with your dad, were you close with him during that short amount of time before you were locked up when you were 15?
No, we were not. We were not close at all. He spoke on some documentary that was an entire waste of 6 hours of nonsense about how we bonded with doing model airplanes or something. We didn't do models. We didn't bond. He would sit there and tell me all these little stories of him being a Green Beret and how he was just a total badass in the world when the man hasn't done anything. I had somebody pull his DD-214 and it didn't have none of that nonsense on it. The man can build anything he wants. I mean, he's very gifted when it comes to designing stuff, but he always takes the shortcut, and then when it gets hard, he leaves. He doesn't want to bother. it's too much effort to complete something. In short, he went to doing what he was doing. We stayed apart. He picked me up after school. I had to go with him to office parks where he was doing some construction. And it was literally 3 hours of construction and then 2 hours of run around stealing everything. Things he didn't even need. Nails, carpet, doorknobs. You know, if someone left an extension cord behind, he'd cut the end of it off and take you know, underneath the door. And the man would steal anything. We didn't get along. He didn't like anything that I did. I was told that when I went to school, if I got in a fight, that if I lost, I was not his son. If I won, I went too far. There was no middle ground. Either was not engaging hard enough or I engaged too hard. I'd much rather go ahead and go full tilt boogie and be done with it. I'm going to get an ass whooping no matter what I do. I'd rather go ahead and hurt the kid and never have to fight him again. And the word get out that that's not one to be messed with. So I don't have to fight again. Because when I get home, my dad's going to beat my ass anyhow. So you can't please him. So I just gave up trying.
When you did spend time with your dad, what did you enjoy doing with him?
The man can build anything. I learned how to weld. I learned about some machinery, weight loads, how to reinforce items. I learned how to build stuff. I mean, the man can build anything he wants to put his mind to. I have watched him sit there and jerry rig with scrap metal and build nothing, to take a pile of nothing and build something out of it. We were doing a lot of machinery for the gold refining business, retorts, furnaces, various equipment, and I got to drive bobcats and front end loaders. And I mean, as a kid, they put me in this piece of machinery, and I like doing stuff. I don't do idle time, so building stuff was fun. That's about the only thing we really bonded on, is building stuff.
I believe I read something somewhere about you and your dad blowing things up and shooting guns and him teaching you gun safety and all that. Is there any truth to that?
We didn't blow anything up. My dad would tell me all kinds of stories about how to properly use primer cord and deck cord and how to place a charge and how to do it. But it was all theoretical. I mean, there was no actual practical use. I'm a gun person. I don't blow things up. I mean, it's not my thing. And quite honestly, I'm not even sure if half the stuff he told me was true. He would explain that. I mean, he always had guns around, and there was a lot of conversation about guns and his world. But I took that, like I said, I thought he was the man. He was talking about how he was an arms dealer and everything else, and the man was not. So as a kid, I started buying up stolen pistols where somebody would steal a gun from their family's home or something and sell it. I'd buy these things up, clean them up, and I was reselling like 138 and thought I was following in my dad's footsteps. I mean, it was goofy as that sounds, but that's all that really was with any guns or explosives. That wasn't true. That was something the media came up with, that we didn't blow anything up.
So let's talk about your school years. What was your behavior like in school, starting from as early as you can remember?
I didn't like going to school. I had no interest. I was bored. When I was 7, right after Michelle and Michael were kidnapped, I was having a lot of problems at school. A lot of kids were giving me a hard time. Somebody came and got Michelle and Michael, but they left me. So I caught a lot of grief on it. And I ended up stabbing somebody on the school bus with a pair of school scissors. Started having a lot of bullies who kept messing with me because I was always the new kid. And they would always turn around and come at me, 2 and 3 at a time. I'd end up stabbing one of them or hit him with a stick or, hit him with a trash can or something. And the next thing I know is everyone's calling me the bully. You came at me with 3 people. I was by myself. You may have that backwards. But since I poked a hole in somebody, I must be the bully. So I just stayed away from kids. The school grades were horrible. I mean, I was a C student at best. Didn't really care. It didn't matter what my grades were. I was going to get beat at home for it anyhow. You get 5 A's and 1 C or 1 D, and I mean, why couldn't you do that? It's not good enough. Okay. So I just gave up and didn't care. My grades were horrible. Now, later on when I went to college, I was straight A's. Once I was paying the bill and I wanted to be there, I was a straight A student. I mean, I became the teacher's assistant and everything else, but as far and did some tutoring. But when I was on the state's budget, state public schools, I was a C student at best. Every time I got around kids, it turned into, I was always, like I said, I was always the new kid, and I didn't even try to remember their names because I figured I wasn't going to be here long enough. That didn't really instill me well with them wanting to be my friend either. So I get picked on a little bit, and then I would do something like smack one with a broomstick. So I was never really around any of them. My parents didn't push any sports. They didn't push Cub Scouts or any other activities. It was just you're home. Don't be late for dinner. Bye.
Did you have any hobbies as a child?
No. I did a lot of reading. I played in the woods, rode my bike. Wasn't allowed to go anywhere. Didn't join any sports. Never learned, still know how to play football. Literally never played any of these sports. I just ride the bike. That was about it.
Did you have a best friend growing up?
I had one friend that I thought he was a close friend, and then he ended up shooting my dog with a BB gun, and then I got blamed for shooting the dog with a BB gun. I'm not the one who shot him. He did. So when I got blamed for it, once I got ungrounded, I went across the street and beat his ass, and then I tried to kill him. He ended up being he liked to huff and paint, thinner, all that kind of stuff. And I found some really caustic stuff in the garage and gave it to him with the intent of him going ahead and huffing it, and pretty much hope he died from it. At the end of it, I don't know what he did, but I ran into him 2 years later, and he was a walking vegetable. So I guess it worked. But that's about as close as I had to a friend. I had one in Arizona that was a friend, and somebody shot him. So it wasn't me. Some wannabe gang initiate, whatever, drove by and shot him one day trying to, I don't know. I wasn't involved.
So that brings me to my next question. I read that you have a history of animal cruelty, and the BB gun incident, that explains that. I believe there was an incident involving a goldfish and putting Clorox in its bowl or something like that, and it died after being poisoned.
Now that one I'm guilty of, but it's not what it sounds like. I had a 1 gallon little aquarium, like the little ones like you can win at the fair when you win the little goldfish in the little small little tank. I had this small little tank with 1 goldfish in it. It had no filter, no bubbles, none of that. It was just a little 1 gallon tank, and it had some algae in it. And my mom had told me that I could not go out and play, go off in the woods and do whatever I wanted to do until I cleaned the aquarium. I didn't want to sit there inside the house and listen to her on the phone and deal with it. And I figured, okay, well, Clorox, I'm thinking Clorox, chlorine. We put chlorine in a pool to get it clean. I wasn't thinking it was going to kill the fish. I figured it was going to go. I'd do a little splash in it. It would take off all the algae, and I come back to a clean aquarium. Yeah, it cleaned it all right. I came back a couple hours later to a dead fish floating, and Mom could smell the Clorox and went, "What the hell?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I put a little splash in there to get rid of the algae, and it killed the fish." somehow that got turned into, a 12-year-old kid who just didn't want to clean the tank turned into a goldfish murderer. Like I was stalking out like psycho with a knife in the shower. It's a goldfish, folks. It was a 12-year-old kid who didn't want to clean the tank. Don't make it what it's not. I wasn't drowning kittens. I wasn't cutting dogs up. I don't even hunt. The only thing I've ever shot was people. I don't hurt animals. Now, I don't mind shooting people. If you want to come at me and try to hurt me, I'm definitely going to hurt you. But I'm not into hurting animals. I mean, I even spent $80,000 on a fence at my land to keep the hunters off my land so they wouldn't hunt Bambi. Because my stepdaughter wanted to feed the deer. I wanted to feed the deer. And deer are not unless you feed them if you shoot them. So I put up a 6-foot chain link fence that was 2 miles long. Animal abuse I'm not into.
Did you engage in any criminal activity prior to the case that landed you in prison at the age of 15?
Yes. I had tried to shoot somebody who had shot a friend of mine. The guy had shot a friend of mine. I was told about what his car was, and I dumped an entire magazine through the window and through the door, and then I ran like hell. I have no idea if I actually hit him. I mean, I had never even really fired a gun at that time. I put 13 rounds to the door and dropped the gun in a trash can, one of those dumpsters down the alleys in Tempe. I don't know. I had robbed a drug dealer. When I say drug dealer, please understand some kid from my school who basically was selling weed. I needed school supplies. My dad would not buy me school clothes, school supplies. He wasn't going to be bothered. Basically, I was told, figure it out, or I'll take care of it, and the man would never take care of it. So basically, I went, found the guy who all the time ran around with his little backpack selling weed, and I robbed him. So I threw the weed in the trash can, kept the cash. Went to the store and bought school clothes. For a very brief moment, I was doing a bicycle chop shop where a friend of mine was stealing freestyle bicycles, and we were taking the bikes, sanding them down, changing the numbers on them, repainting them, mixing the parts up, and then trying to resell them. My dad caught me on that one, made me get the bikes back. The money that I had made on it, he confiscated and went on a date with it. So that was my lesson on that one. If you get caught, Dad's taking the money. Also, the last time I ever stole anything.
Did you ever spend any time in juvenile detention for any of those crimes?
No, my first run-in with the law was the night that I got arrested with my neighbor, and the mess that was. She was 14, almost 15. I was 15. We were playing around back and forth. At that time, back in the 80s, dating didn't mean what it was now. Most of us were not getting laid. We were a little bit grabby, a little bit touching, but you're dating one girl one week, you're dating another girl the next week. It really just meant, you went to the park together. It wasn't anything serious. She ended up dating a 22-year-old, and then we got into a fight. And I'm 15, he's 22. I lost big time. He liked to carry a 38 around, and then my dad turned around and disappeared for about a week when he went to Ohio to take care of a family issue, and he was gone for a week. I got drunk for the first time ever and pretty much showed my ass. Took one of his handguns, put it in my pants, went over there and talked to her, and I really just meant to go over there and just talk to her. There was no real plan to do anything. The gun was more because I was worried about him. I knew he carried a gun. He'd love to show everybody how he carried a gun, and I didn't want to get my ass kicked again. But My thought process was in the trash can. Ended up pulling the gun out, talking her into coming in the alley, walked her back to my house, and in the process of where I thought we were going to have a conversation, I ended up assaulting her. And I've had to deal with that ever since. I mean, that was one of the most embarrassing things in my life, that I did that. It was over with before it even started. Walked her back to her house. The cops had been called. Her parents had been called to the house to figure out where she was. When they couldn't figure out where she was, they called the cops. We were out walking around trying to get my dog. At the time that the cops pulled up, I knew I'd screwed up. She went to them, went back to the house. I went back into my house and pretty much just locked the door. I figured I just wasn't going to come out. I knew my dad was going to come back later that day anyhow. That night he was due to come back. And I didn't want to be there. I had been trying all weekend to find a way to get out of that damn house. Foster home, anything would have been fine. I actually wanted to go to juvie. Anything to get out of that damn house. I got tired of getting my ass beat all the time. I mean, I don't mean to use her as an excuse, but I really wasn't thinking well. And I mean, I wanted somebody to actually want me for once. And I really overstepped my bounds big time. When the neighbor came and talked to me, and I agreed to go ahead and open the door for the cops. When they opened up the police car, they almost had to hurry up and catch up with me because I couldn't wait to get in the back of that cop car. As far as I'm concerned, me going to prison saved my life. I wanted out of that house. So I never thought I was going to get 15 years for it. And there's some issues with that why I got 15. But I was glad to be out of that house. So I went to juvie for a month. They had a court hearing. My mom actually asked the judge to give me more time because I would be in juvie until I was 18. She was back to trying to be with one of her husbands, trying to get back with him again, and thought that if I came home, even after I was 18, that, because I would have to do at least 3 years in juvenile, that I would mess up her marriage. At 18, I'm not coming home. I'm going to the recruiting office. I have no intent of coming home, ever. But she didn't like the idea that I could come home. So she asked the judge to give me more time to remand me as an adult so that I would not interfere with her marriage. So I ended up getting 15 years flat, which is no parole. It didn't matter whether I behaved myself or I misbehaved the entire time. I had to do 15 years day for day.
And after you were arrested, were you held in a juvenile or adult facility while you were on trial?
While I first got arrested, I went to juvenile. Then I had to go to a court hearing where the judge decided my mom had made her plea to move me to the adult court. Later that day, I was packed up and moved to the county jail, which is the adult county facility. It's a minor unit. You're under 18, but you're in maximum security on the 6th floor. So you're away from the adults, but you are in maximum security. It is a true zoo. So I was held there. Once I went to trial and I received my time, within 30 days I was moved again down to the Tucson complex of the adult prison to Building 9. Building 9 is the minors unit of minors who are convicted as adults. So you're on an adult yard, but you're still around under 18.
And what was your experience like at the time as a juvenile being held in an adult facility with other maximum security inmates that weren't necessarily adults yet, but you were in the same facility as adults?
I'm scared shitless. I'm around all kinds of people who have all kinds of charges. You've got guys in there for rape. You've got guys in there for murder. It was I think it was 11 This one kid had been in there he basically wanted to know what it was like to kill, so he shot his sister in the head. Really not some great people. I had never been around Judy and that world, and all of a sudden now I've got, 60 of them around me. And I mean, it was a learning experience. I got into a bunch of fights. Pretty much spent my time by myself, but I mean, at any given moment, you might get in a fight. So, you've got adults that you can see them through the glass, but you can't talk to them. But you see them all the time. When you go to court, you are handcuffed, but you are also moved with the adults. And you hear all the rumors of, when you go to prison, which most of the rumors are not true, which you see in movies is not what happens in here. But you don't know that. You assume this, you're going to get raped, or you're going to get beat up, or you're going to get stabbed, and the odds are none of that's going to happen to you. But you don't know that, and as a 15-year-old kid, you sure don't know that. So, I was pretty nervous.
How were you treated by the other inmates?
In the minors unit, if you don't fight today, you're going to fight tomorrow. Everybody wants to fight. Everybody wants to prove something. Everybody's scared that Bubba's going to fuck him in the ass. Everyone's worried that something's going to happen when they hit adult yard. And the guards love to promote it, telling you how Bubba's going to love you in the shower and all this. We were not amused. You got 60 guys scared, and this is going to happen to them. So every 5 seconds, if someone blinked at you funny, I mean, you were putting a tuna can in a sock and beating the hell out of him. Stabbing with a pencil. There's 100 ways of making a weapon, and we had them all. It was every day was somebody getting hauled off to lockup. When I finally got transferred to the adult yard, I was so ready, thinking that was the way it was, that I was swinging on anything and everything that came near me. You had guys come into your room to check you out, see what they call heart checks, and see if you were going to fight. I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to stab you. Get away from me. And the adults freaked out, and they were like, we don't go that far. Well, I do. Leave me alone. And these kids turned vicious because, they made us vicious. We're in a bad situation, and it got worse. When I turned adult, the night you turn adult, they basically put you in lockup because you can't be a minor and you're not an adult. So a few hours before midnight, they put you in lockup. The next morning, you're 18, and you roll up to the yard. As soon as I got there, every time I had an adult come anywhere near me, I knocked the hell out of him. They used to have in Arizona heart checks, was one to see whether you would fight or not. Were you going to curl up in a little ball, which if you did, all those things may happen to you, or were you willing to fight? They would send people down to your room, and I kept breaking them. I just spent 3 years in the minors unit fighting every day. By now, I'm pretty comfortable with doing that. Leave me alone. And I kept breaking them, and they kept sending them. And then I had words when they sent a couple old timers down to talk to me and told me to calm down. I said, well, I'll calm down when you guys stop sending people at me. And they explained to me that basically I didn't need to swing on everybody. Okay, well, then stop sending people to my room. They stopped, I stopped. From that point on, my prison time wasn't rough. I got up, I went to work, I worked in the kitchen. Later on, I got a job in construction. Then I got a job in maintenance. Then I got a job at ACI at the sign shop where I was in shipping from road signs, paving, the building. We did all kinds of stuff. And I ran the shipping department. I was constantly learning new trades because when I went in, I had no skill, and I did not want to walk out of prison at 30 years old and know absolutely nothing. So I took a lot of effort to learn multiple trades so that I could be hired when I got out. But my prison time wasn't that bad.
So, when you were found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison at the age of 15, what was running through your mind?
First part was I really screwed up, but it was going to get me out of this house. So when I got the handcuffs on, and as I was going towards the police car, my dad pulled up, and I could not wait to get in the cop car. When I got to the police department, I didn't even try to play the old "I'm not guilty," "oh, it's misunderstanding." First words out of my mouth was, "I'm guilty," and I told them everything I did. I wasn't even trying to hide it. Wasn't proud of it, but I already figured, I mean, I just got caught. What is the point of saying I didn't do it? I've never done that. Every time I've been caught doing something, I didn't play the old, "oh, I'm not guilty. You can't prove that." I've always just gone ahead and fessed up to it, take the punishment, and let's move on. I mean, do what you got to do. I wanted out of that household. I honestly thought that I would go to juvie for a couple of years, or go to juvie and then go to a foster home, and I would not be returning to my family. Instead, the courts decided to put me in prison, and I did 15 years on a kidnapping charge, when people who were in there for murder did less time. So I didn't see that one coming.
After being convicted, how did it feel to register as a sex offender?
It really, really sucked. And I think it caused a lot of the problems that developed into me coming here. When I got out, I was 30 years old. I had never had a checking account. I had never had a driver's license. I didn't know how to do my taxes. I had never had a job where I had to punch in. I had never had anything, never been on a date. Basically, I was clueless on how to live my life outside the fences. Zero clue. I didn't jaywalk. I didn't break any laws. I wasn't going to piss off law enforcement. I wasn't going to do anything. The sheriff, at first, didn't even want me to be on the list. He figured that I had already done all my time, and that it was from when I was a kid, and that he wasn't going to have me register. But then after he checked with his legal department, they decided to go ahead and register me, but not make it to where I had to come in all the time. As soon as I did, everybody in these days, I mean, they Google searched everybody, and the websites started becoming more and more popular, and you end up having the neighborhood soccer moms who sit at home all day and check registries, and then wanted to swear up and down that anytime anybody was on that list, regardless of what you were on the list for, that you must be stalking them, or you were stalking their kid, or you had some, sexual deviancy on your mind. I wouldn't even get near kids. My charges had nothing to do with kids. I didn't want to mess with anybody. I just want to be left alone. I was free. I had my own little apartment. I was working as a graphic designer. I was happy. I didn't jaywalk. And then I started having people messing around, because on the website it would give your address, and they could find my phone number back when we had landlines. This is before cell phones were so popular. This is when cell phones first started coming out. And I had people who would turn around and copy the website and post the neighborhood and notify everybody in the neighborhood that I was on the sex offender list. And my boss found out, and because my boss knew that I was on the sex offender list, a job that would normally pay me $18 an hour, I got offered $8 an hour and told if I didn't want the job, he would go to somebody else. Take it or leave it. You're an ex-con. It's $8 for you. It's the person that I replaced was making 18. I got 8. So they didn't make it very easy. It makes it hard to go to dates. you have to explain every time you turn around that I'm not going to rape you. I don't want to molest you. I really just want to be left alone, and I was embarrassed for what I was in there for. I've always been embarrassed. I mean, that was that whole situation was a mess, and it was entirely my fault.
What was your behavior record like in prison at the time?
My minors unit time, until I hit 18, I was fighting constantly. I was not the greatest inmate. I mean, I was constantly fighting. I was disruptive. I mean, it was almost like if you weren't disruptive, there was a problem. You were attracting the wrong type of attention if you were behaving yourself. So nobody did. Once I became an adult, I think I was disruptive for about 6 months, and then I realized that I didn't have to be. People there basically reached out, got me to go to the weight pile, got me into weightlifting, helped me get jobs, putting me toward the education department. I started taking night classes in college. I started learning things. Prison wasn't that bad. I mean, there's really no rehabilitation, but it is what you make of it. So I made the best I could out of it. I kept changing jobs where I could learn something. Every 3 or 4 years, I would change careers and try to learn something. Became a plumber's assistant. Then I became working in construction. Construction was first. Block buildings, welding. Went to plumbing, and from there went on to other jobs. Most of my 15 years, I only had about 3 years of disciplinary issues. I mean, I had nothing from that point on.
How did you occupy your time?
For many years, while we had a weight pile, I worked out twice a day. We had powerlifting competitions. I would enter those. Everybody was into working out back then. This was the late 80s, early 90s. Everybody wanted to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody was working out. I had hobbycraft. I was braiding horsehair at the time into belts and keychains and hat bands and whatever people would buy. Later on, I got into painting. And when we were locked down, I would paint with acrylics at nighttime or on the weekends. And that took up a lot of time. I went to college, got a degree while I was there, but it took me many, many, many years to get, and it wasn't officially, it was an associate. It didn't become a bachelor's until I got out, and I had to take a lab and a public speaking class at the Greenville Tech, and then I applied for it, and that became an actual bachelor's degree. I was still short 2 classes for them to allow it to be a bachelor's. But I had taken classes, computer science. They finally had a computer course that they opened up, and I took all those classes and trying to learn some trades. I stayed busy. I did not do idle at all.
At any point in time during your incarceration, did you feel remorse for the incident you were convicted of?
No, I was very embarrassed about what I had done as a kid. I was 15. It's entirely my fault. I mean, I was trying to go for, I wanted to talk to her. I never thought that I would end up raping my neighbor. I can't say I'm sorry enough. From that point on, I swore to myself I would never do it again. I never did it again. And that's one of the reasons why I got so irritated when Kayla accused me 4 months after I got arrested for the murders that I had raped her, when I didn't rape Kayla. I paid Kayla. I'm wrong for a lot of things. I admit to what I did, but that I didn't do. But what I did when I was 15, I did do, and I had a lot of guilt about it, and I spent a lot of time as I grew up trying to make amends as I could, never making a woman feel uncomfortable, never pushing myself on somebody. If it even looked like a situation that someone was going to be uncomfortable about, I just left. I never put myself in that situation again. and it never happened. But that one I did, and I've been embarrassed about it ever since.
The first time being in prison, do you feel that it helped you or benefited you in any way, shape, or form?
Much like college, it gave me time to think. I think the earlier years, they didn't need to leave me in at 15. I think they could have rehabilitated me early on. I did most of the work myself. They didn't need to give me that much time. I think that after a while, it got so ingrained to where the prison mentality of taking care of business got to where that's the way I think. If you attack me, I'm going to do what I have to do to make you stop. And I'm going to do it as efficiently as possible so that I don't get caught and that you can't hurt me any further. There's no rehabilitation in prison. I mean, they have classes, but there's no teachers. They tell you on paper there's rehabilitation, but there's not. They proclaim on the board that there's Alcohol Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and whatever other class they could think of, to have growth in treatment facilities, and they don't. It's just on paper. Even here in this prison in South Carolina, everybody on paper has a job. I'm a dorm worker. I haven't been out of my room in 3 years. We're not dorm workers. We're just on paper as being dorm workers, so they can tell people on the streets that they're rehabilitating us, that we have jobs. There's no jobs. Nobody's going to work. Nobody's paying for it. It's just on paper. Half the classes, there's no classes. It's just on paper. Once in a while they'll do a GED, but they can't get a teacher to stay. They couldn't do the same thing in Arizona. They couldn't get teachers to stay. I had to go out of my way to get classes at nighttime. Some were mail-in. Some I had to go to other prisons to take the class, take the bus there, take the class, get brought back each night. I mean, you really have to work to get an education there. You have to earn it in more ways than one. I think it gave me time to slow down and think about what I wanted to do, and more importantly, what I did not want to do. And crime was not where I wanted to be. So after 15 years, I got out of prison. My exit photo, everyone looks at that photo and thinks I'm wearing the orange jumpsuit. The orange sweatshirt. And they think that's me at like 18. That's me at 30. I didn't age. I mean, I was happy to get out and start a new life. You make prison what you want of it. I made the best of it I could. I think they need to make a lot of changes to the prison systems, and they definitely need to get real and realistic with what rehabilitation is, because I was a rarity big time. My whole thing of going to school and doing the classes and going to the library and checking out books and memorizing them is a rarity. It doesn't happen. So most people don't come out of prison like I was. Then I changed when I got out here. So I got into some issues, and of course, it led to this.
So in 2001, you're released from prison in Arizona after serving 14 and a half years. What was the feeling like when you were released from prison?
Well, it was actually 15 full. They give you the back time of while you're in jail. So I mean, I went in November 24th of '86, and I got out of prison November 25th, 2001. I was scared. I mean, I had no driver's license. I had no job. I had nowhere to go. I had no savings. I had a couple dollars I had saved up, but I had no way of cashing the check they gave me. No bank, even with the state ID they gave me, no bank would cash it for 7 days. They had to hold on to it. I had no account, so that wasn't going to help me any. So basically, I got dumped out the front gate with the clothes I was wearing. My mom picked me up, decided that she wanted me at this time. She was not married, and she decided that she wanted to be a mom again. And quite honestly, since I had no options, the inner sun sounded like a really good idea. I really had no other options. So I got on the plane and I came to South Carolina, and I tried my best to fit in, get a job. I was doing, got me a job as a graphic designer. I was mowing lawns and doing side graphics on the side. I joined church. I did anything I could to get around people and learn how to be around them and not be the ex-convict. I was a whole lot more scared of them than they were of me. I had no idea how to deal with people on this side. So I did the best I could.
What's your opinion on the sentencing judge in your case that transferred you to the adult system as a juvenile?
I think the man should be fired. There was no reason to the adult system. They had a program in place at that time that they already said they had a extremely high success rate, that with me being a first-time offender, that it would greatly work with me, that I would fit in very well. They had no budget, and quite honestly, they felt that they didn't have enough budget for any more beds. So because of budgetary constraints, they were not going to send me to the program. I could have gone there and actually had some counselors and worked towards what is your problems and actually work something out of it. I still would have had to do my time, but I would have actually had counselors and trying to guide, you were a 15-year-old kid, work this thing out. Why are we even here? Instead, I went to an adult courts, and I got nothing. Whatever I had to do myself. So, I had to educate myself for the most part. I think the judge really didn't have the public's interest in mind. I don't think it had my interest in mind. I don't think it had anybody. I think he just processed people in, processed them out, and then went on to his golf game. I don't think he did anybody any justice.
After you were settled in South Carolina, you said that you were working a graphic designer job and mowing lawns and so on and so forth. While you were doing all that, was there any point in time that you decided to further your education?
Yes. Had gone ahead, had a job, was not being paid anything, had been shopped around for another one. I got offered a job at Powers Printing and was there for 3 days and told the boss man that there's no way I'm working for you. He basically hired me. There was a woman who had been working there for about 11 years. I had no idea what typesetting was. I'm a graphic designer. I'm not a typesetter. It didn't matter. He wanted me to learn typesetting from her, and then I was going to be her boss, telling her what to do. It just didn't sound right. And after 3 days of 2.5 days of dealing with him and trying to figure this out, I quit. Told her what he had done. She actually got the promotion, and I went back to college. I signed up about 3 months later to go back to Greenville Tech and work on a possible degree for business. They just slammed my flat down to put a tree in here, and I'm like, these are some of the rudest little animals. Quite honestly, these inmates just had their necks snapped. So they're just rude. We got more inmate police around here than we got police.
Though you were a registered sex offender, you somehow obtained your real estate license. How did you end up in the real estate business?
While I was in college, I was working at that time at nighttime as a waiter. I hated it, but I needed to learn how to be around people, and I was very shy. I was entirely comfortable being behind a computer, but to walk up into a room of people and just speak to them, I was not very comfortable with it. I knew that I needed to be, so I got a job as a waiter to force me to do it. I was actually going to college for a business degree, and it had already worked out where I was going to be going to law school. There's some irony for you. While I was there, one of the bartenders told me that I should probably try real estate, that I'd be good at it. I didn't believe it, but he taught me into it. I took the class. 8 days later, I passed the class, went and filed the paperwork, and I was a real estate agent. I started selling homes almost overnight. I got extremely lucky, and I worked my tail off. And within 5 months, even though I had a very, very low split with my company, I had made $80,000 in 5 months. I wasn't going to go to law school. I was making too much money. You know, I applied for it. I mean, I lied, but I didn't have to. At that time, the real estate commission, the only thing they asked you to do, you had to run a background check. The background check was only South Carolina. It was not national. I ran the background check, which you had to provide. SLED would do it for $25, and SLED had me as having 0 convictions in my life. At the same time, there is a form you must fill out, and it has a checkbox. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? I didn't want to have it come back on me, so I actually checked yes, that I had, and then I explained Arizona. Now, I did clean it up. I did twist a little bit. I mean, I lied. You know, I focused on the kidnapping, which is what I was convicted of. I wasn't convicted of rape. I was convicted of kidnapping. I explained that. I did twist around why the gun was there, but I mean, softened it up. But there's no policy against me having a real estate license. The only thing that blocks you from having a real estate license is fraud. As long as you don't do bad checks or steal someone's money, you can have a murder charge. They will give you a real estate license. So all the drama later on that I had lied to the commission wasn't entirely true. I had gone ahead and told them that I had done prison time, and I would have got it anyhow. Since then, they've changed the law and reworked it. And in South Carolina, I actually have the Kohlhepp bill, which the irony of that one is the bill would do absolutely nothing against me, where you have to basically, every 2 years, we have to renew our license. There's a checkbox of, have you been convicted, done any felonies in the last 2 years? No, I haven't. So it would not have caught me on anything. They make you do a background check, which wouldn't have caught me for anything. And even with the charges that I had had in the past, I had already disclosed them. There's no argument. So their bill would do absolutely nothing for someone in my position. But it was to make the public feel better.
And while in the real estate business, what did your average workload look like, whether it be daily or weekly basis?
I worked my tail off. I was broke. I was going to college full time. I was an honor student. I was getting straight A's. I was working three to four nights a week as a waiter. I was selling homes as fast as I could. And as soon as I made a decent sized deal, I quit real estate. I quit being a waiter, but I was still in college full time. Got up in the morning, went to class. Middle of the day, I'm making phone calls, taking other classes, do my homework. After hours, I was showing homes. Weekends, I was showing homes. As soon as I graduated from college, I went real estate full time. And my first year, I made Rookie of the Year, North and South Carolina, all the top awards. By my second year, I had made all the awards for the corporation, North and South Carolina, and I was being recruited for other firms, which I did not go. My workload was heavy. I averaged about 122 homes a year. All I did was work.
And while at work, did you ever engage in any type of inappropriate activity while on the job?
I don't do fraud. I don't mess with people's money. I had a lot of female clients that got turned on with me being a real estate agent. A lot of the women were going through divorces, and I ended up having a lot of sex in my office where the soon-to-be ex-wife or ex-wife was basically mad at him, so she was having sex with a realtor. I had 2 words: thank you. Was sleeping with a lot of my clients, was sleeping with my clients' daughters that were of age. I worked my tail off. That's about the only thing I did improper, and it was all consensual. It was consensual and legal. But other than that, I mean, in the real estate environment, you got mortgage lenders sleeping with you, you've got appraisers sleeping with you, you've got everybody, the attorneys that are giving you, they're having business after hours parties where they're trying to get you drunk and they're trying to talk you into using them on all your transactions. As a realtor, all you're doing is having sex and eating. Life's not bad. If you're willing to work and put in the effort, the rewards are there. It's not the most moral profession, but it definitely is rewarding.
That was part 1 of my interview with Todd Kohlhepp. Thank you for listening.
Unforbidden.